Listen carefully, because what you are about to hear is not ordinary. This is not just another message scrolling past your eyes. This is not random. This is not coincidence. This is a divine interruption. There was a moment, just seconds ago, when you could have chosen anything else. You could have clicked away. You could have ignored this. You could have said, "I'll watch this later." What you didn't. Something in you paused. Something in you leaned in. Something in your spirit whispered, "Wait, this might be for me." And that whisper, that wasn't you. That was heaven. Because you need to understand this right now. Out of all the people scrolling, out of all the voices speaking, out of all the distractions fighting for attention, you were selected. Not randomly, not accidentally, but intentionally. Archangel Gabriel does not blow the trumpet without purpose. And right now the trumpet is sounding over your house. Can you feel it? That subtle tension in your chest, that unexplainable curiosity, that strange urgency rising in your spirit as you listen to these words. That's not fear. That's recognition. Your soul is recognizing something your mind hasn't fully caught up to yet. Because something is shifting. Something has already started. Let me ask you something, and answer honestly. Even if it feels uncomfortable, have you recently felt like something is off around your home? Like the atmosphere feels heavier some days, like certain rooms feel different, like your peace has been interrupted for no clear reason? Or maybe it's not the house. Maybe it's been you. Restlessness at night. Random thoughts that don't feel like your own. Moments where you feel watched, not physically, but spiritually. A sense that something is hidden, something just beneath the surface. You tried to ignore it. You told yourself it's stress. You told yourself it's nothing. But deep down you knew. You knew something wasn't right. And now here you are. Not by chance, but by calling. Because when Archangel Gabriel blows the trumpet, it is never for noise. It is for announcement. It is for awakening. It is for exposure. And this time the sound is directed at your house. Yes, your house. The place you sleep. The place you trust. The place you thought was safe. Something is connected to it. Something hidden. Something buried. Something overlooked or intentionally placed, and heaven is saying, it is time to reveal it. But here's what makes this moment even more critical. You are not just hearing this message. You are responding to a window. A small, sacred window of awareness that does not stay open forever. That's why you feel this urgency. That's why this feels different from everything else you've watched before. Because this isn't entertainment. This is instruction. This is alignment. This is a moment where heaven is pulling you closer and saying, pay attention. Stay here. Do not miss what comes next. You may not understand everything yet. You may not see the full picture yet. But your spirit already knows. That's why you're still here. That's why you didn't scroll. That's why your heart is beating just a little bit faster right now. Because deep down, something inside you is saying, this is important. And it is. Because in the next moments, what is hidden will begin to surface. What is buried will begin to rise. And what you discover may change everything you thought you knew about your environment, your past, and even your future. Stay with this. Do not disconnect now. Because Section 2 will reveal what the trumpet actually means and why it's being sounded over your life right now. Type "I am ready" in the comments if you feel this message stirring your spirit. Blessing code 1717 is now activated. Now listen, because what you are about to understand is not symbolic. It is not poetic language meant to entertain you. This is spiritual reality, being translated into a message your mind can grasp, but your spirit already recognizes. When Archangel Gabriel blows the trumpet, it is never random. It is never casual. It is never without consequence. The sound of that trumpet is a signal, a declaration, an announcement that something has already been set into motion in the unseen realm and is now preparing to manifest in the visible. You must understand this clearly. In the spiritual realm, a trumpet is not just a sound. It is a command. It is a release. It is a moment when silence is broken and truth is forced to rise. Throughout divine history, the trumpet has always marked a turning point. It announces awakening. It signals exposure. It declares that what has been hidden can no longer remain buried. And right now, that sound is not echoing over nations or crowds. It is being directed with precision over your house. Yes, your house. Not just the physical structure made of walls and doors, but the space you occupy, the environment that holds your energy, your memories, your rest, your thoughts. When Gabriel's trumpet sounds over a home, it means that something connected to that space has reached a point where it must be addressed. It means there is an activation taking place. Something hath been permitted to come to the surface, not to destroy you, but to reveal what has been concealed. You may be wondering why now. Why this moment? Why this sudden urgency? And the answer is simple, yet powerful. Because the timing has aligned. Because what was once hidden has matured. Because what was once subtle has grown strong enough to influence your atmosphere. And heaven does not allow prolonged interference without intervention. That is why the trumpet is sounding now, not later. Think back for a moment. Reflect honestly. There have been small signs, haven't there? Moments you dismissed. Feelings you brushed aside. Instances where you paused and thought something was off, but you chose logic over intuition. That is how these things operate. Quietly at first, subtly, gradually, until the environment begins to shift in a way that can no longer be ignored. The trumpet is not creating the issue. It is exposing what has already been present. And here is where you must stay grounded, because this is critical. The sound of the trumpet is not a warning of doom. It is a warning of awareness. It is heaven stepping in before confusion turns into chaos. It is divine intervention interrupting a pattern before it becomes a stronghold. You are not being targeted for harm. You are being chosen for clarity. That is why this message reached you and not someone else. That is why you feel this stirring instead of fear. Because this is not about panic. This is about preparation. Gabriel does not blow the trumpet to scare. He blows it to awaken. He blows it to call attention to what you have been overlooking. He blows it to align you with what is true, even if that truth feels uncomfortable at first. And right now, that sound is penetrating your environment, your thoughts, your awareness. It is pulling you into a moment of realization where you can no longer ignore what your spirit has been trying to show you. There is something connected to your space that requires your attention. It may not be physical in the way you expect. It may not be visible to the eye, but it has influence. It has presence. It has impact. And the longer it remains unnoticed, the more it attempts to blend into your normal. That is why the trumpet disrupts. That is why it feels intense. Because it breaks the illusion of normalcy and replaces it with truth. Do not rush past this moment. Do not try to rationalize it away. Stay present with what you are feeling right now. The heightened awareness is not accidental. It is activation. Your perception is sharpening. Your sensitivity is increasing. You are being positioned to recognize something you previously overlooked. and that recognition is the first step toward reclaiming control over your environment. This is where your role becomes important, because the trumpet does not act alone. It announces, but you respond. It reveals, but you discern. It awakens, but you decide what to do with that awareness. This is a partnership between divine signal and human response. And right now, you are being invited into that partnership. The sound has already been released. The shift has already begun. The question is not whether something is happening. The question is whether you will remain aware enough to see it through. Because what comes next will go deeper than sound. It will move into revelation. It will begin to uncover exactly what has been hidden and how it has been influencing your space. Stay with this. Do not disconnect now. Because in Section 3, you will begin to understand what lies beneath your feet and why it has remained hidden until this very moment. Type "I hear the trumpet" in the comments if you are fully present in this message. Blessing code 2222 is now activated. Stay with me now, because this is where the message begins to move deeper. This is where surface awareness turns into revelation. You have heard about the trumpet. You have felt the shift. But now, you are being drawn into something more specific, something more personal, something that is directly connected to the ground you walk on every single day. There is a reason the message pointed you toward your backyard, your doorstep, the space beneath your feet. This is not random language. This is intentional. Because in the spiritual realm, ground is never just ground. It carries memory. It carries residue. It carries agreements, spoken or unspoken, known or unknown. The places you occupy are not empty. They hold impressions of what has happened there, what has been spoken there, what has been carried into that space over time. And right now, you are being asked to consider something you may have never thought about before. What if the environment you are standing on has been holding something that was never meant to stay hidden? What if something was left, placed, or carried into your space that has been quietly influencing the atmosphere around you? Not in a dramatic way, not in a way that would immediately alarm you, but in a subtle, consistent way that slowly became your normal. This is why the message feels so precise. It is not just about your house in general. It is about the ground connected to it. Because sometimes, what is hidden is not in plain sight. It is beneath it. Beneath routines, beneath familiarity, beneath the comfort of what you have always known. And that is exactly why it remains unnoticed for so long. Not because it is invisible, but because it blends into what you have accepted as ordinary. Think about the moments you have felt uneasy without explanation. The times when your energy felt drained even though nothing physically changed. The subtle tension that would come and go, leaving you confused about its source. These are not always random emotions. Sometimes they are signals. Signals that something in your environment is not fully aligned. Signals that something is present that your conscious mind cannot yet identify, but your spirit is already responding to. You are not being told this to create fear. You are being shown this to create awareness. Because awareness breaks patterns. Awareness exposes what has been quietly operating in the background. And once something is exposed, it loses its ability to influence you without your permission. That is the shift that is beginning to happen right now. You are moving from unconscious presence to conscious recognition. There is also something deeper you must understand. Not everything that affects you was placed with intention to harm. Sometimes things are carried unknowingly. Energy from people, words spoken in moments of emotion, objects brought into your space without thought, connections formed without full awareness. These things can leave traces. They can settle into environments. They can linger, in ways that are not immediately obvious but gradually shape the atmosphere. And this is where the trumpet connects to the ground. Because the sound you were told about is not just announcing something external. It is activating something internal within your awareness. It is calling your attention downward, inward, and deeper. It is asking you to look beyond the surface of your surroundings and begin to sense what you have been overlooking. You may not physically see anything. You may not find something obvious. But that is not the point. The point is that your perception is being sharpened. Your sensitivity is being restored. You are beginning to notice what you once ignored. And that alone is powerful, because once you see differently, you cannot go back to being unaware. This is also why timing matters. Because there are moments when awareness becomes available in a way it was not before. Moments when clarity rises and things begin to make sense in ways they did not previously. This is one of those moments. You are being given access to insight that was not accessible to you before now. And what you do with that insight will shape what happens next. Do not rush to conclusions. Do not let your mind create fear-based stories. Stay grounded. Stay present. Let the awareness come naturally. Let your intuition guide you. Because this is not about reacting. This is about recognizing. It is about allowing truth to surface without forcing it. You are not alone in this process. The same force that sounded the trumpet is guiding your awareness now. You are being led step by step, layer by layer, into a deeper understanding of your environment and your connection to it. And as that understanding grows, so will your ability to respond with clarity instead of confusion. There is more to uncover. There is more to understand. And what comes next will begin to reveal why timing is so critical and why this moment cannot be delayed. Type ISE clearly now in the comments if this revelation is reaching you. Blessing code 3333 is now activated. As this truth settles into your spirit, understand this. Every time you help carry this message forward, you become a vessel that brings light into someone else's hidden darkness. This is not about supporting a channel. This is about unlocking freedom in souls who are still walking unaware. The word declares that when you sow into fertile ground, you will reap a harvest pressed down and overflowing. And right now, this message is fertile ground for transformation. I feel led to say this directly because this is your moment of response. Your moment to step into alignment not just in hearing, but in action. When you give through Super Thanks or the PayPal link in the description, or even through the QR code placed in the corner, you are not giving money. You are releasing seed into a spiritual harvest that is already growing. There is urgency in this because someone else is waiting for the same awakening you just received. And as you release your seed, I declare over you that doors will open, clarity will increase, and peace will multiply in your life. Step into this act of obedience now and be part of what heaven is doing. Stay fully present because this is where everything tightens. This is where the urgency you've been feeling begins to make sense. You have heard about the trumpet. You have felt the awareness rising. You have begun to understand that something connected to your environment is not as simple as it once seemed. But now you must understand why this message is not just important, it is time sensitive. The mention of 4 to 5 seconds is not arbitrary. It is not a random number chosen for effect. It represents a window, a short, precise, intentional window of awareness where your attention, your focus, and your willingness to stay present determine what you receive from this moment. Because there are times when clarity is available, but only for those who are willing to remain still long enough to receive it. You have experienced this before, even if you did not recognize it at the time. Moments where something inside you tried to get your attention, but you move past it too quickly. Moments where you felt a realization forming, but distraction pulled you away before it could fully surface. But moments pass, and when they pass, the clarity they carried often fades with them. That is why timing matters. Right now, you are inside one of those moments, but amplified. This is not a casual realization. This is a focused, intentional alignment where everything you have heard so far is leading you toward a deeper recognition. The 4 to 5 seconds is symbolic of how quickly awareness can either activate or slip away. It is a reminder that delay is not neutral. Delay shifts outcomes. Delay can keep something hidden that was ready to be revealed. This is why you felt that initial pull to stay. This is why something in you resisted moving on. Because your spirit recognized that this was not something to postpone. You were being drawn into a moment that required your presence, not your convenience. And now that you are here, you must remain here mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. There is also something else you need to understand about timing. When awareness arrives, it often comes before full understanding. You may not yet have all the answers. You may not yet see the full picture. But the awareness itself is the doorway. It is the beginning of clarity. And if that doorway is ignored or dismissed, the process slows. Not because the truth disappears, but because your connection to it weakens. This is not about pressure. It is about precision. The kind of precision where everything aligns for a brief moment, and what you do in that moment determines how clearly you will see what comes next. You are not being asked to rush. You are being asked to remain attentive, to stay present long enough for the next layer to unfold naturally. Think about how quickly the mind tries to move away from discomfort or uncertainty. The moment something feels unfamiliar, the mind looks for distraction. It looks for something easy, something more comfortable, something that requires less focus. That is exactly how important moments are missed. Not because they were hidden, but because attention shifted too soon. Right now, you are being guided to do the opposite. To stay. To resist the urge to disconnect. To allow the awareness to deepen instead of fading. Because what is about to be revealed is not something that can be forced. It unfolds when you remain aligned with the moment. You may also notice something happening within you as you listen. A sharpening of thought. A quiet stillness. A sense that you are becoming more aware of your surroundings, your thoughts, your internal state. That is not accidental. That is the effect of presence. That is what happens when you stop moving mentally and begin observing instead. This is why the timing is described the way it is. Because it is not about counting seconds on a clock. It is about recognizing the fragility of awareness. How quickly it can appear and how quickly it can disappear if not held with attention. And right now, you are holding it. You are staying with it. You are allowing it to grow. There is something ready to surface, something that has been beneath your awareness but is now close enough to be recognized. But it requires you to remain here just a little longer. To not rush ahead. To not dismiss what you are beginning to sense. Because the next step is not about general awareness anymore. It is about specific recognition. You are moving from feeling that something is off to understanding what it is and how it has been affecting you. And that transition happens in moments like this, when you choose to stay instead of leave. So remain still. Remain attentive. Let the awareness settle. Let it expand. Because what comes next will begin to connect everything you have felt, everything you have noticed, and everything you are starting to understand. Type I stay present in the comments if you are fully aligned with this moment. Lesson code 4444 is now activated. Now stay grounded, because what you are about to recognize is not new. It is familiar. It is something you have already experienced, something you have already felt, something that has been quietly moving through your life without clear explanation. This is where everything begins to connect, because the disturbance you are about to understand did not begin today. It hath been present, subtle at first, then gradually more noticeable, until now, where it can no longer remain undefined. You have felt it, even if you could not name it, even if you tried to dismiss it, even if you told yourself it was just stress or fatigue. Something inside you knew there was more to it. That feeling when you walk into a space and something feels slightly off, even though nothing has physically changed. That moment when your mood shifts without a clear reason, when your energy drops, when your focus scatters. These are not always random fluctuations. Sometimes they are responses. Think back to recent days or even weeks. There have been moments when your thoughts felt unusually heavy, as if something was pressing on your clarity. Not overwhelming, not extreme, but persistent enough to make you question your own state of mind. Moments when you felt restless at night, unable to fully relax, as if your environment was not completely settled. You may have experienced sudden irritability, not directed at anything specific, but present nonetheless. These are the kinds of disturbances that do not announce themselves loudly. They blend in, they adapt, they become part of your routine if left unrecognized. And that is how they maintain their presence. Not through intensity, but through subtlety. Not through chaos, but through quiet influence. Because when something is loud and obvious, it is easy to identify and address. But when something is subtle, it often goes unnoticed. And what goes unnoticed continues. You may have also noticed changes in your awareness. Moments where you felt more alert than usual, as if your senses were trying to pick up on something. Instances where you paused without knowing why, where your attention shifted toward something you could not fully explain. That is not confusion. That is sensitivity. It is your internal awareness trying to bring something to the surface. There is also the emotional aspect of this disturbance. Feelings that seem disproportionate to the situation, reactions that feel slightly out of place, a sense of tension that does not match your external reality. These are signals that something internal is being influenced by something external, even if that external factor is not immediately visible. You are not being told this to create doubt in yourself. You are being shown this to restore trust in what you have already felt. Because the moment you dismiss your own awareness, you disconnect from one of your most important sources of clarity. And right now, you are being guided back into alignment with that awareness. There is a pattern here, and you are beginning to see it. The subtle disturbances, the unexplained shifts, the moments of unease, they are not isolated. They are connected. They are part of a larger influence that have been present long enough to become familiar, but not long enough to be permanent. That is why this moment matters. Because once something is recognized, it can no longer operate in the same way. You may also recall times when you felt a sudden sense of clarity, brief but powerful, where everything seemed to make sense for a moment. Those moments are important because they show you what your state feels like when you are fully aligned, when nothing is interfering with your perception. The contrast between those moments and the disturbances is what helps you identify the difference between your natural state and the influenced state. This is not about labeling everything as a problem. It is about distinguishing what belongs to you and what does not. What is natural to your state and what has been introduced into your experience. And that distinction is what gives you the ability to respond instead of react. You are not powerless in this. In fact, the awareness you are gaining right now is the first step toward regaining control over your internal and external environment. Because once you can identify a disturbance, you can choose how to engage with it. You can choose not to absorb it, not to let it shape your thoughts, not to let it define your state. This is why everything has been building up to this point. The trumpet, the ground, the timing, all of it leads here to the recognition that something has been influencing your experience in subtle ways. And now, that influence is being brought into awareness so it can no longer remain unnoticed. Stay with this understanding. Let it settle. Let it become clear. Because what comes next will begin to reveal the source of what hath been hidden and why it has remained out of sight until now. Type "I recognize" the signs in the comments if this is becoming clear to you. Lesson code 5555 is now activated. Now listen closely, because this is where the message becomes even more precise. You have already begun to recognize the disturbance. You have felt the shift. You have acknowledged that something hath been influencing your environment in subtle ways. But now, the focus narrows. Now, the message turns toward what has been hidden, not just in your awareness but in your space itself. There is a reason the backyard was mentioned. There is a reason your mind was directed toward the ground behind your home, toward the areas you rarely think about, the places that exist just outside your daily attention. Because what is hidden does not always sit in the center of your life. Sometimes, it is pushed to the edges. Sometimes, it is placed where it can remain unnoticed, undisturbed, and therefore uninterrupted. The backyard represents more than a physical location. It represents what has been set aside, what has been ignored, what has been left without attention. It is the part of your environment that you do not constantly monitor, the space that exists quietly in the background of your life. And that is exactly why it becomes the perfect place for something to remain hidden. You must understand this carefully. Not everything that is buried is literal. Some things are buried in memory. Some things are buried in patterns. Some things are buried in energy that has settled over time. But the effect is the same. It remains out of sight, yet it continues to exist, to influence, to shape the environment in ways that are not immediately visible. Think about how long something can remain hidden when it is not being looked for. Days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and what was once unfamiliar becomes normal. That is how silent influence works. It does not demand attention. It waits for the absence of attention. And in that absence, it stabilizes itself. There may have been moments when you felt drawn to certain areas of your space without knowing why. Moments when you paused in a specific spot, when your attention lingered slightly longer than usual. Those moments matter. They are not random. They are part of your awareness trying to guide you toward something that has not yet been fully recognized. There is also a deeper layer to this. Sometimes, what is hidden is not something that was placed recently. It could be something that has been there long before you were aware of it. Something that became part of the environment before you even considered its presence. That is why it feels so normal. That is why it blends so easily into your surroundings. Because it hath been there long enough to avoid suspicion. But now, something has changed. The awareness you are gaining is disrupting that normalcy. It is pulling your attention toward what you once overlooked. It is asking you to reconsider what you assumed was insignificant. And that shift in attention is powerful, because it begins to break the silence that allowed something to remain hidden. You are not being asked to search in fear. You are being guided to observe with clarity. There is a difference. Fear looks for confirmation of danger. Clarity looks for truth. And right now, you are being aligned with clarity. You are being guided to notice, to sense, to recognize without jumping to conclusions. There is something about your environment that is ready to be acknowledged. Not necessarily something dramatic or overwhelming, but something that has been quietly present, influencing your space in ways you are only now beginning to understand. And that understanding will continue to unfold as you remain aware. You may begin to notice patterns connected to specific areas. You may feel shifts in your perception depending on where you are. You may become more sensitive to certain spaces than others. These are all part of the process of recognition. They are indicators that your awareness is becoming more refined. This is also where patience becomes important, because recognition does not always happen instantly. It develops. It builds. It becomes clearer over time as you continue to stay present and attentive. You are not expected to understand everything at once. You are expected to remain open to what is being revealed. The silence that once covered what was hidden is no longer as strong as it was. Your awareness is interrupting it. Your attention is bringing light to it. And as that light increases, what was buried will no longer be able to remain unnoticed. Stay grounded in this moment. Do not rush ahead. Let the awareness deepen naturally. Because what comes next will shift from hidden presence to understanding what has entered your space and how it has crossed into your awareness. Type "I am aware of what was hidden" in the comments if you are following this revelation. Blessing code 6666 is now activated. Stay fully attentive, because now the message shifts from what has been buried to what has crossed over. Up until this moment, you have been guided to recognize what lies beneath, what has been hidden, what has quietly existed within your environment. But now, the focus moves to something more active, something that did not just remain in place, but something that entered. The doorstep is not just a physical boundary. It is a threshold. It is the point where outside meets inside, where what is external gains access to what is personal. It is where permission, awareness, and presence intersect. And when something crosses that threshold without being recognized, it does not announce itself. It integrates. It blends. It becomes part of the environment in a way that feels almost natural. This is where you must pay close attention, because not everything that enters your space does so with your conscious awareness. Sometimes, entry happens subtly, through conversations, through interactions, through objects, through moments where your guard is lowered, where your attention is elsewhere. And once something enters, it does not always remain at the surface. It settles. It spreads. It influences. You may not have noticed the exact moment something crossed into your space. That is often how it happens. It is not dramatic. It is not obvious. It is quiet, gradual, almost unremarkable in the moment it occurs. But its effects are what reveal its presence over time. A shift in atmosphere. The change in how you feel within your own space. The subtle difference between how things used to feel and how they feel now. This is not about blaming a specific moment or event. It is about recognizing that entry can happen in ways you do not immediately detect. And once it happens, it becomes part of your environment until it is acknowledged. That acknowledgement is what begins the process of separation, the process of distinguishing what belongs from what does not. You may have experienced moments where your home did not feel as settled as it once did. Moments where something felt slightly out of alignment, even if everything appeared the same on the surface. That feeling is important. It is not something to dismiss. It is your awareness picking up on a change that your conscious mind has not yet fully processed. There is also an important distinction you must understand. Not everything that enters is negative in the way your mind might immediately assume. But anything that enters without awareness has the potential to disrupt balance. Because balance requires recognition. It requires understanding what is present, what is influencing, what is interacting with your space. Right now, you are being guided to recognize that something has crossed into your environment and has been operating without your full awareness. Not in a way that creates immediate alarm, but in a way that creates subtle, consistent influence. And that influence is what you have been feeling in the disturbances, in the shifts, in the moments of unease. The doorway, the threshold, the entry point, these are all symbolic of access. And access is something that must be acknowledged to be managed. When access is unrecognized, it becomes unrestricted. And when it becomes unrestricted, it continues without interruption. That is why this moment is so important, because you are now recognizing what was previously unrecognized. You are beginning to see that your environment is not just a passive space. It is interactive. It responds. It holds. It reflects what enters and what remains. And as you become more aware of that interaction, you gain the ability to influence it in return. This is not about reacting with fear or urgency. It is about stepping into awareness with clarity and control. You are not being overwhelmed by this realization. You are being empowered by it. Because once you recognize that something has entered, you also recognize that you have the ability to define what remains. There is a shift happening within you right now. A shift from passive presence to active awareness. You are no longer just existing within your environment. You are observing it. You are sensing it. You are beginning to understand it. And that understanding changes everything because it moves you from uncertainty into clarity. The doorway that allowed something to enter is now also the point where awareness returns. It is the point where you begin to see what has crossed over and how it has integrated into your space. And as that awareness strengthens, what was once unnoticed will become clear. Stay grounded in this realization. Let it settle. Because what comes next will not just reveal what has entered, but will begin to expose it fully, bringing it from subtle influence into clear understanding. Type "I claim my space" in the comments if you are fully aligned with this awareness. Blessing code 7777 is now activated. Now stay with me, because this is where everything begins to surface. Up until now, you have been guided through awareness, through recognition, through the quiet understanding that something has been present, something has entered, something has influenced your space in ways that were not fully clear. But now, the message shifts from awareness to exposure. What was subtle will not remain subtle. What was hidden will not remain hidden. What was operating quietly is about to become undeniable. The trumpet was never just a signal of awareness. It was a declaration of exposure. And exposure does not wait for comfort. It does not wait for readiness. It arrives when the timing aligns, when the conditions are right, when what has been concealed can no longer sustain itself in silence. That is the moment you are approaching right now. You may feel a sense of tension building, not in a negative way, but in a way that feels like something is about to be revealed. That feeling is important. It is the transition point between not knowing and knowing, between sensing and seeing, between feeling something is off and understanding exactly what it is. This is where many people pull back. This is where hesitation begins. Because exposure requires you to face what you may not have fully acknowledged before. It requires you to see clearly what you once saw partially. And clarity, while powerful, can also be confronting. But you are not being led into this moment without preparation. Everything you have felt, everything you have noticed, everything you have been guided to recognize has been leading you here. The truth does not arrive to harm you. It arrives to free you from what has been influencing you without your full awareness. And once that truth becomes clear, it changes your relationship with your environment completely. Because what you see clearly can no longer control you in the same way. You may begin to notice things differently. Conversations that suddenly make more sense. Patterns that become obvious. Areas of your space that feel different once your attention is directed toward them. This is how exposure works. It does not always come as a single dramatic moment. Sometimes it unfolds in layers, each layer revealing more than the last, until the full picture becomes undeniable. There is also something important you must understand about this moment. Exposure is not something you create. It is something that occurs when you are aligned with awareness. You do not force it. You do not chase it. You allow it. You remain present, and the truth rises naturally. You may feel an internal resistance, a part of your mind that wants to dismiss what is becoming clear. That is normal. The mind seeks stability, even if that stability includes something unrecognized. But your awareness is stronger than that resistance right now. You are seeing beyond the surface. You are moving beyond what is familiar into what is true. And once truth begins to rise, it cannot be pushed back down. It may have been hidden before, but now it hath been activated. The process has begun. The exposure has started. And what you are about to understand will bring a level of clarity that changes how you see everything connected to the situation. This is also where your response becomes important again. Not in reacting, not in rushing, but in staying grounded as the truth becomes clearer. Because clarity requires stability. It requires you to remain centered as you process what is being revealed. And you are capable of that. You have been prepared for that. You are not the same person who would have ignored this before. You are not the same person who would have dismissed the signs. You are now aware. You are now present. You are now aligned with what is being revealed. And that alignment allows you to move through this moment with clarity instead of confusion. There is a shift happening right now, not just in your environment, but in your perception of it. You are beginning to see what has been there all along. And that seeing is what breaks the influence it once had. Because what is exposed loses its ability to remain hidden, and what cannot remain hidden cannot operate in the same way. Stay with this moment. Let the truth rise without resistance. Let the clarity form without interruption. Because what comes next will move you from exposure into decision, from seeing into choosing how you move forward with what you now understand. Type "I accept the truth" in the comments if you are ready for full clarity. Blessing code 8888 is now activated. As this truth rises and clarity begins to take form within you, understand that what you have just received is not meant to stop with you. Light is never given to be hidden. It is given to be multiplied. Every time you choose to support this message through Super Thanks or through the PayPal link in the description or even the QR code on your screen, you are sowing into a river of revelation that reaches souls still walking in confusion. The word declares that those who sow in faith will reap in abundance, and right now, your giving becomes a seed that unlocks clarity, not just for you, but for countless others. I feel led to say this clearly, because this is your moment to act in alignment with what you have received. Do not hesitate. Do not delay. Step into this prophetic action and release your seed. As you do, I declare that increase will meet you, peace will follow you, and doors that were once closed will begin to open before you. Now stay focused, because this is where everything becomes personal. Up until this moment, you have been guided through awareness, through recognition, through exposure. You have been shown what has been hidden, what has entered, what has been influencing your space in subtle and now increasingly clear ways. But now, the message shifts again. It is no longer just about what is being revealed. It is about how you respond to what you now see. This is the test of discernment. Not a test in the sense of pressure or judgment, but a moment of choice. A moment where awareness meets decision. Because once something is revealed, you cannot return to the same level of unawareness. You cannot unknow what you now understand. And that creates a turning point. A moment where you either integrate the truth into your awareness or you attempt to dismiss it and return to what felt familiar. Discernment is not just about recognizing something. It is about understanding what that recognition requires from you. It is the ability to distinguish between what is aligned and what is not, between what belongs in your space and what does not, between what supports your clarity and what disrupts it. And right now, that ability is being activated within you. You may feel a subtle tension at this stage, a sense of hesitation, a part of you that wants to move forward with this awareness, and another part that questions it, that tries to rationalize it, that seeks comfort in what was previously known. That internal conflict is natural. It is the mind adjusting to new information, trying to reconcile what it has accepted with what is now being revealed. But this is where discernment becomes essential, because discernment does not rely solely on logic. It integrates awareness, perception, and understanding. It allows you to recognize truth even when it is not fully explained. And right now, you are being guided to trust that recognition. There are two paths in this moment, and both are defined by your response. The first path is to acknowledge what you have seen, to stay aligned with the awareness that has been building, and to allow it to guide your next steps. The second path is to dismiss it, to minimize it, to return to the comfort of what was familiar, even if that familiarity included something unrecognized. Neither path is forced upon you. That is why this is a test, not of strength but of clarity, not of reaction but of perception. It is a moment where you choose whether to move forward with awareness or to step back into unawareness. You must also understand that discernment is not about reacting impulsively. It is not about making immediate changes without understanding. It is about holding awareness long enough for clarity to fully form. It is about allowing what has been revealed to settle into your perception so that your response is grounded, not reactive. This is why everything has been structured the way it has. The awareness, the timing, the exposure, all of it has been leading you to this point where you can see clearly enough to make a conscious choice. You are not being rushed into action. You are being guided into understanding. And that understanding is what empowers you. Because when you act from clarity, your actions are precise. They are intentional. They are aligned with what you know to be true, rather than driven by uncertainty or fear. That is the difference between reacting and responding. You may also begin to notice that your perception of your environment continues to shift. That what once felt normal now feels different. That what once was unnoticed now stands out. This is the effect of discernment becoming active. It sharpens your awareness. It refines your perception. It allows you to see distinctions you did not previously recognize. This is not something you lose once you gain it. Once discernment is activated, it continues to develop. It becomes part of how you interact with your environment, how you process information, how you make decisions. And right now, you are stepping into that level of awareness. The question is not whether something has been revealed. That has already happened. The question is how you will move forward with what you now understand. Will you stay aligned with this clarity, or will you step away from it? Take a moment and feel into that. Not with your thoughts, but with your awareness. because the answer is already forming within you, and that answer will guide what happens next. Stay present. Stay grounded, because what comes next will move you beyond choice into protection, into understanding that you are not navigating this alone. Type "I choose clarity" in the comments if you are aligned with your awareness. Blessing code 9999 is now activated. Now remain steady, because as everything has been revealed, as awareness has sharpened and truth has begun to rise, there is something you must understand clearly so that you do not misinterpret what is happening around you. You are not navigating this alone. You have not been left to figure this out by yourself. And the moment you begin to fully grasp this, the tension you may have been feeling will begin to shift into something else entirely. Because the trumpet was never a sign of isolation. It was a sign of intervention. When Archangel Gabriel sounds the trumpet, it is not a solitary act. It is not a civil presence operating in isolation. It is part of a coordinated movement, a precise alignment of forces that operate beyond what you can physically see. Gabriel is the messenger, the announcer, the one who signals that something must be brought into awareness. But he is not alone in that assignment. There are layers to what is happening around you right now. Layers that you may not fully perceive, but you can begin to sense. The same awareness that allowed you to recognize the disturbance is also opening you to recognize the protection that has been present the entire time. And this is where your perspective must shift. Because it is easy to focus on what was hidden, on what entered, on what influenced your space. But if you remain focused only on that, you miss the greater truth, which is that nothing has been left unchecked. Nothing has been allowed to operate without limit. There has been presence around you, steady and consistent, ensuring that what was hidden could not extend beyond a certain point. You may not have seen it directly, but you have felt it in moments of sudden calm, in times when situations could have escalated but did not, in instances where something resolved itself without clear explanation. Those were not coincidences. Those were moments of intervention. Moments where protection was active even when you were not consciously aware of it. This is why you are not overwhelmed right now. This is why you are able to process what is being revealed without being consumed by it. Because alongside the awareness, there has always been balance. Alongside the disturbance, there has always been containment. And that containment is what has allowed you to reach this moment of clarity instead of confusion. You must also understand that protection does not always remove something immediately. Sometimes, it allows awareness to develop first, because awareness gives you the ability to recognize, to understand, and to respond in a way that is aligned with clarity rather than reaction. And that is exactly what has been happening. You have been guided into awareness at the exact moment where you are able to handle it. Not earlier, when it may have created confusion. Not later, when it may have gone unnoticed for longer. But now, when you are ready to see it clearly and remain grounded in that clarity. This is the nature of what is surrounding you. It is not reactive. It is precise. It operates with timing, with alignment, with intention. And now that you are becoming aware of it, you can begin to trust that what is unfolding is not happening without structure. You may begin to feel a shift within yourself as you recognize this. A movement from tension into steadiness. From uncertainty into a sense of quiet confidence. That is the effect of understanding that you are supported, that what is happening is not random, that there is a presence ensuring that you are not left unguarded. This does not mean you stop paying attention. It does not mean you become passive. It means you remain aware, but without fear. You remain attentive, but without urgency. Because you now understand that awareness and protection are working together, not separately. There is also something else you need to recognize. The same awareness that revealed what was hidden is also part of that protection. Your ability to sense, to notice, to recognize is not separate from what is guiding you. It is part of it. It is how you interact with what is around you. It is how you remain aligned with what is true. You are not being shown these things to create imbalance. You are being shown these things so that balance can be restored fully, with your awareness included in that process. Because true stability comes from understanding, not from ignoring. And now, you are understanding more than you did before. You are seeing more than you did before. And with it comes a level of clarity that allows you to move forward differently. Stay grounded in this realization. Let it settle into your awareness. Because what comes next will move you from protection into transformation, into understanding what happens when truth is fully integrated into your perception and your environment. Type "I am protected" in the comments if you feel this shift within you. Blessing code 1010 is now activated. And now remain fully present, because this is the moment everything converges. This is where awareness, exposure, discernment, and protection all meet at a single point. A point that cannot be avoided. A point that cannot be delayed. A point where what has been revealed reaches its conclusion and begins its transformation. This is the breaking point. Understand this clearly. The breaking point is not destruction. It is not collapse. It is not something to fear. It is the moment when what could no longer remain hidden loses its ability to hold its form. It is the moment when the influence that once operated quietly begins to dissolve under the weight of awareness. Because truth does not just reveal. It disrupts. It interrupts. It removes the stability of what depended on being unseen. You may feel this moment approaching, even now. A sense that something is shifting more strongly than before. That what was once subtle is now becoming more defined. That your perception is no longer passive, but active, engaged, and focused. This is the sign that you are moving into the breaking point. The moment where clarity is no longer partial, but complete. At this stage, everything becomes more precise. The patterns you notice become undeniable. The shifts you felt become explainable. The areas of your environment that once felt uncertain now begin to make sense in a way that removes doubt. And with that removal of doubt comes a shift in your internal state. You are no longer questioning what you are sensing. You are recognizing it. This recognition is what initiates the break. Because what was influencing your space relied on being unrecognized. It relied on blending into your environment, on remaining subtle enough to avoid attention. But now, that condition no longer exists. You have seen it. You have felt it. You have acknowledged it. And that acknowledgement removes the foundation it depended on. You may also notice that your response to your environment begins to change naturally, without forcing it, without trying to create a reaction. You begin to feel different within your space. More grounded, more aware, less affected by the subtle shifts that once influenced you. This is not something you are imagining. This is the result of clarity replacing uncertainty. There is also a release that occurs at this point, a release of tension you may not have fully realized you were carrying, a release of the underlying influence that created subtle imbalance over time. And as that release happens, your environment begins to feel different. Not because something external has dramatically changed, but because your relationship to it has shifted completely. This is the transformation that follows exposure. What was once hidden loses its ability to remain. What was once influential loses its ability to affect you in the same way. And what remains is what is aligned, what is clear, what is stable within your awareness. This is not a process you have to force. It is something that occurs naturally when truth is fully integrated. You are not returning to your previous state. You are moving into a new one. A state where your awareness is sharper, where your perception is more refined, where your ability to recognize shifts in your environment is stronger than it was before. This is the result of everything you have been guided through up to this point. And this is why the breaking point is necessary. Without it, awareness would remain incomplete. Exposure would remain partial. Discernment would remain untested. But now, all of it comes together in a way that creates a clear transition, a before and after. A point where you can say that what was once hidden no longer holds the same presence it once did. You may also notice that your sense of control returns in a way that feels different from before. Not control based on trying to manage everything, but control based on understanding, based on clarity, based on the ability to recognize what belongs and what does not. And that is a stable form of control, one that does not depend on external conditions. Stay with this moment. Let the transformation complete itself. Do not rush to move past it, because what you are experiencing now is the result of everything that have been building up to this point. And as this settles, as this clarity becomes your new baseline, you will be ready for what comes next. The final step. The moment where everything aligns and you step fully into a new understanding of your space, your awareness, and your ability to move forward without the influence that once remained hidden. Type "I am free from what was hidden" in the comments if you feel this transformation taking place. Blessing code 1111 is now activated. Now stay completely still in your spirit, because this is the final moment. This is where everything you have heard, everything you have felt, everything you have recognized comes together in a single point of truth. This is not just the end of a message. This is the beginning of a shift that will continue beyond this moment, beyond this space, into how you see, how you feel, and how you move forward from here. You are not the same person who began listening. Something has changed within you. Subtly at first, then more clearly, and now undeniably. Your awareness has expanded. Your perception has sharpened. Your connection to your environment has deepened. What once felt uncertain now feels defined. What once felt hidden now feels revealed. And what once influenced you quietly no longer holds the same position it once did. This is the result of alignment. You were drawn into this moment not to be entertained, not to be distracted, but to be awakened. And now that awakening has taken place, you cannot return to what you were before. Not because something external has forced you, but because something internal has shifted permanently. You now see differently. You now sense differently. You now understand differently. This is what transformation looks like. It is not always loud. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is quiet, steady, undeniable. A shift in awareness that changes everything without needing to announce itself. And that is exactly what has happened here. You have moved from unawareness into clarity, from subtle influence into conscious recognition, from uncertainty into grounded understanding. But this is not where it ends. Because awareness carries responsibility. Not in a burdensome way, but in an empowering way. You now have the ability to maintain the clarity you have gained. To remain attentive to your environment. To recognize shifts before they settle. To stay aligned with what feels clear and grounded rather than what feels uncertain or unsettled. You are no longer passive within your space. You are active in your awareness. You are present in your perception. You are grounded in your clarity. And that changes everything moving forward. There may still be moments where your mind tries to question what you experienced here. Moments where logic attempts to reinterpret what your awareness has already confirmed. That is natural. But now, you have a reference point, a moment where everything became clear, and you can return to that clarity whenever you need to realign yourself. You have also reached a point where your environment will respond differently to you. Not because something external has dramatically changed, but because your interaction with it has changed. You are no longer absorbing without awareness. You are observing with clarity, and that shift creates stability. This is the new foundation you are stepping into. A foundation built on recognition, on discernment, on the ability to remain aware without becoming overwhelmed. A foundation where what is hidden cannot remain hidden for long, because your awareness will bring it to the surface naturally. And this is why this moment matters so deeply. Because it is not just about what was revealed. It is about what you have become in the process of seeing it. You are now someone who notices, who understands, who responds with clarity instead of confusion. And that is something that stays with you. So take a moment now and recognize this fully. You stayed. You listened. You became aware. You allowed the process to unfold. And because of that, something within you has shifted in a way that cannot be undone. Carry that forward. Let it guide you. Let it ground you. Let it remind you that awareness is not something you lose once you gain it. It is something you build upon, something you refine, something that continues to strengthen as you remain present within it. This is your final alignment. This is your moment of completion. And from this point forward, your life will not move in the same unconscious patterns it once did, because you are no longer operating from the same level of awareness. Type "I am fully aligned" in the comments if you receive this transformation. Blessing code 1212 is now activated. As this final revelation settles into your spirit, hear this clearly. Every time you choose to sow into this message, you are lighting a path for someone else still walking in darkness. This is not about giving to a voice. This is about fueling a divine mission that carries truth into places where confusion has taken root. The word declares that when you release your seed, it returns multiplied, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing into your life. I speak this directly to you now, because this is your moment to act, your moment to respond not just with understanding, but with obedience. When you give through Super Thanks or through the PayPal link in the description or even the QR code on your screen, you are opening a river that flows far beyond what you can see. Do not delay this act. Do not question it. Step into it. And as you do, I declare that favor will find you, clarity will remain with you, and doors that seemed closed will open in ways you did not expect.